I've always thought of Walmart as a safe, familiar place. Big, bright lights, families with carts, late-night workers grabbing snacks. Nothing unusual. But the night this happened, something fell off the moment I pulled into the parking lot. The lights that usually washed over the rows of cars seemed dimmer, flickering like they were struggling to stay alive. Out of habit, I parked close to the entrance, but the lot was almost empty. Just a few scattered vehicles. Too few for a store that was supposed to be open 24 hours. As I stepped out of my car, a strange silence pressed down on me. Normally, even late at night, you'd hear music faintly spilling out the sliding doors or the sound of carts rattling. Instead, it was dead quiet. The air was still heavy, like something was waiting. My footsteps echoed across the concrete in a way that made me instantly regret leaving the safety of my car. I hesitated by the entrance, glancing at the other cars. One of them had its headlights on, dim like the battery was dying, but I couldn't see anyone inside. I told myself it was nothing. People leave their lights on by mistake all the time. Still, I felt eyes on me, watching. Have you ever walked into a place you've been hundreds of times, but suddenly felt like you were trespassing? That's what it felt like walking toward those automatic doors. And I should have trusted my gut. I should have turned around and left right then. The sliding doors opened slower than usual, grinding like the sensors barely detected me. When I stepped inside, the air smelled faintly of bleach, stronger than normal, almost chemical. I expected to hear the usual faint hum of music overhead, but instead, silence greeted me. No chatter, no employees greeting customers, not even the sound of a cart rolling over tile. I pushed forward, trying to shake it off. Maybe the store was in the middle of stocking or some late-night cleaning schedule. I grabbed a cart anyway, the rattling wheels loud against the unnatural stillness. My own footsteps seemed to carry down the aisles like I was the only one alive in the building. As I turned the first corner into the grocery section, I froze. Rows of shelves stretched out, fully stocked, but not a single person was there. No workers, no other customers, just aisle after aisle of food and products lined up like they'd been waiting for someone to notice. I glanced toward the back of the store, half expecting to see a stock worker pushing a cart, but nothing moved. I asked myself quietly, have you ever been inside a place that suddenly felt staged? Like everything's been set up just for you, and you're not supposed to touch it? That's exactly how Walmart felt at that moment. I had only been inside for maybe 5 minutes when the overhead speakers crackled. My heart jumped. Finally, some sign of life. A distorted voice came through, garbled at first, like the mic was too close. Then it cleared and a low male voice said, "Attention shoppers, the store will be closing in 5 minutes." I froze. Walmart never closed, not this one. I'd been there dozens of times past midnight, and it was always open. My eyes shot toward the entrance instinctively, but from where I stood, the doors were too far away. The announcement echoed again, "Please make your final selections and proceed to check out." My first thought was that I'd walked into some emergency drill, or maybe a temporary closure. But something in the tone of that voice, slow, deliberate, almost amused, made my skin crawl. It didn't sound like any employee I'd ever heard. I called out, "Hello? Is someone working tonight?" My voice bounced back to me from the empty aisles, unanswered. Have you ever felt like someone is addressing you directly, even when it's supposed to be a general message? That's what it felt like. Like the voice knew I was there, alone, and it wanted me to hear it. I decided to test my nerves and walked deeper into the store, past frozen foods and cleaning supplies. My cart's squeaking wheels were the only sound cutting through the silence. As I turned into aisle 14, the toy section, I stopped cold. A lone cart sat abandoned in the middle of the aisle. Inside it, half-empty bags of chips, a soda bottle, and a box of diapers. I stared at it, waiting for someone to come back for it. But no one did. It was as if whoever had been shopping simply vanished mid-aisle. The strangest part? The soda bottle was open, condensation dripping down its sides, like it had just been placed there minutes ago. I leaned down to touch the cart, but something told me not to. My hand hovered over the handle, and then I noticed something smeared faintly across the metal, dark, reddish smudges. It looked like fingerprints, dried, but fresh enough to still look recent. My stomach dropped. I whispered to myself, "This isn't right." Have you ever stumbled onto something that made you realize you weren't supposed to see it? That cart felt like evidence left behind, waiting for me to figure out the wrong thing. I pushed away from the toy aisle and made my way back toward frozen foods, trying to convince myself I was overreacting. That's when I saw him. At first, I thought it was a reflection in the glass doors, but then I realized no. Someone was standing there, completely still, facing the freezer section. He wore a gray hoodie pulled low over his face, hands shoved into his pockets. He didn't move, didn't shop, didn't reach for anything, just stood there. I slowed my steps, my breath catching in my throat. "Hey, are you working here?" I asked, my voice shaking. No response. He didn't even flinch. It was like he hadn't heard me, or worse, like he wanted me to think that. The longer I stared, the more wrong it felt. He was too still, too patient. I took one step closer, and his head tilted slightly, just enough for me to see the faint curve of a grin in the reflection of the glass. That was enough. I yanked my cart around, abandoning it halfway down the aisle. I didn't care about groceries anymore. All I wanted was to get back to the entrance. Have you ever felt a presence that wasn't just watching you, but waiting for you to come closer? That's exactly what he was doing. I made it to the front of the store, practically running. The glass doors were ahead of me, glowing under the faint parking lot lights outside. Relief hit me until I reached them. I stepped forward, expecting them to slide open like always. They didn't move. I stepped closer, waving my hands at the sensor. Nothing. I pushed hard, but the glass was locked tight, like it was suddenly bulletproof. My panic rose in my throat as I smacked my palms against it. The lot was right there, my car only a short run away, but it might as well have been a mile. Behind me, the intercom crackled again. That same voice. "Attention shoppers, the store is now closed." Only this time, the words dragged out slower, heavier, like whoever spoke them wanted me to understand something final. I turned my head slightly, just enough to glance back, down one of the aisles. Half hidden in the shadows, the man in the hoodie stood perfectly still, watching, waiting. I backed away from the locked doors, my heart hammering in my chest. My breath fogged against the glass, and for a split second, I thought I saw a movement outside in the parking lot. But when I blinked, it was gone. The only thing that remained was the dim glow of those failing floodlights and the quiet hum of the neon sign above. I turned back toward the store. The overhead lights flickered once, twice, and then held steady, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch too far across the aisles. I could feel the man's eyes on me, though I couldn't see him anymore. Every muscle in my body screamed for me to move, but my legs locked in place. The silence pressing harder, broken only by the faint buzzing of the fluorescent bulbs. Then, without warning, a crash echoed from somewhere deep inside the store. The sound of metal hitting tile, like a shelf had collapsed. The noise rattled through the aisles, reverberating all around me until it was impossible to tell where it came from. I swallowed hard and whispered, "I shouldn't be here." And for the first time, I really meant it, but I was trapped. I forced myself to move, clinging to the hope that maybe there was still an employee working. Maybe I wasn't completely alone. My footsteps echoed as I crept toward the customer service desk. That's when I saw her. A woman stood just beyond the registers, her back to me. She wore the familiar blue Walmart vest, her hair tied in a tight bun. Relief flooded me. I almost shouted, but something in me hesitated. The way she stood, too rigid, too still, wasn't right. She wasn't moving like someone busy with work. She was just standing there. I cleared my throat and called out, "Excuse me, can you help me?" My voice cracked, louder than I intended. The woman didn't respond. Slowly, painfully slow, her head began to turn. Not her body, just her head, until it angled over her shoulder, revealing a smile that stretched wider than it should have. Her eyes didn't blink. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over my own feet. She didn't move closer. She didn't speak. She just smiled, watching me like she'd been waiting all along. My body took over before my brain could. I turned and sprinted down the nearest aisle, my shoes squeaking against the polished floor. My chest burned, lungs aching as I darted past shelf after shelf. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I had to get away from her. The intercom crackled to life again. The same low voice filled the store. "Attention, shopper, you're not supposed to be here." The word sent ice through my veins. It didn't even bother pretending anymore. It wasn't for everyone. It was for me. I skidded into the electronics section, desperately searching for another exit. But the emergency doors were chained shut from the inside. The glowing red exit sign above them was almost mocking. I pulled at the chains until my hands hurt, but they wouldn't budge. When I turned back, the store was silent again. No footsteps, no voices, just the oppressive emptiness of endless aisles. Except now I knew better. I wasn't alone. And whoever was in there with me, they didn't want me leaving. Back in 2017, I worked the graveyard shift at Walmart. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. My job was simple: stock shelves, help the occasional late-night customer, and keep myself awake with endless cups of bad coffee. I didn't mind the quiet. In fact, I used to like it. But after what happened one night, I can't step foot in a Walmart after dark anymore. That night started like any other. I parked my car around 11:30 p.m., the lot mostly empty except for a few beat-up sedans belonging to other night workers. The air was heavy and damp, the kind of night where the silence carried too much weight. I swiped my badge, pushed through the employee entrance, and headed for the stockroom. The first red flag came almost immediately. Usually, I'd hear laughter or at least some chatter from my co-workers as they worked in the aisles. But that night, the building was quiet. No carts rolling, no boxes being unpacked. Just the faint buzzing of the fluorescent lights overhead. I told myself they were probably on break, but deep down, I knew something was off. It was too still, too empty, like the store was waiting for me. I grabbed my car stock and headed toward the housewares aisle. Halfway there, a sharp beep echoed through the intercom system. It startled me, mostly because it wasn't scheduled. The call box lit up at the front register. Someone had pressed a button, the one customers use when they need assistance late at night. That would have been normal if I had seen a customer walk in, but the entrance had been dead quiet, and I hadn't noticed anyone come through. My stomach tightened. Still, it was my job, so I set down the cart and walked to the registers. The call box was glowing red, the assistance needed light flashing steadily, but no one was there. The conveyor belts were empty, the checkout lanes deserted. I stood there for a moment, listening. All I could hear was a faint hum of the air conditioning. "Hello," I called out, my voice echoing down the empty lanes. "Is anyone here?" No answer. Just a steady, rhythmic flash of that red light. I pressed the reset button, trying to shake it off, but a cold unease settled in my chest. Someone had called for me, and now they were hiding. I decided to check the security office. If a customer had come in, maybe the cameras would show it. The small room smelled like stale coffee and dust, a space only a few of us ever used. I flipped on the monitors, expecting to see the usual, aisles lined with stock, maybe a co-worker or two, but the screen showed something different. The cameras flickered in and out, static cutting across the feed, but I could still make out shapes. In one aisle, a figure stood perfectly still at the end of the row. The image was grainy, but the outline was clear enough. Someone tall had lowered arms at their sides. I leaned closer, trying to see details, but before I could, the camera feed blinked off. When it came back on, the aisle was empty. My chest tightened. I quickly switched through other angles, scanning each feed. Most were clear, empty, until I hit camera 12. That same figure was there again, this time closer, standing by the freezer section. The feed glitched again, static filling the screen, and when it cleared, the figure was gone. I left the security room, every step heavier than the last. My instinct screamed that I wasn't alone. I pushed my cart quickly through the aisles, trying to focus on my work, but my hands shook too much to steady the boxes. Every time I turned a corner, I swore I saw something just out of view, a shadow slipping around the edge of a shelf, a figure ducking out of sight. At one point, I stopped cold. Down the paper goods aisle, I saw him, a man in dark clothes, standing completely still, staring at me. He wasn't a co-worker. I knew everyone who worked that shift. His head tilted slightly, and even though I couldn't make out his face, I felt him smiling. "Can I help you?" I asked, my voice trembling. He didn't answer. He just took one slow step forward. My body reacted before my mind did. I turned and bolted, the squeaky wheels of my cart echoing like gunshots behind me. When I finally glanced back, the aisle was empty. He had vanished, as if he'd never been there at all. To be why now, my nerves were shot. I told myself I'd grab my keys, clock out early and leave, but on my way to the stockroom, I heard it, a whisper, faint at first, but enough to make me freeze mid-step. It came from the next aisle over, low and drawn out, like someone exhaling words just under their breath. I couldn't make them out, but the cadence was deliberate, almost like chanting. I held my breath, straining to listen. "Hello," I called softly, though I already regretted it. The whisper stopped. For a few seconds, silence filled the air again. Then, from the opposite direction, much closer, the whisper started again. This time, I understood the words. "Don't leave me here." Every hair on my body stood on end. My legs went numb, but instinct forced me to move. I didn't look down the aisle. I didn't want to see what was waiting. I just ran and I burst into the stockroom, desperate to grab my things and leave. My locker was only a few steps away. My hands fumbled as I shoved my jacket on and yanked out my keys. I didn't even bother clocking out. I just wanted out of that building. When I pushed open the stockroom door and rushed toward the employee exit, my heart sank. The metal bar on the door wouldn't budge. It was locked from the outside. That door had never been locked before, not once in all the years I worked there. I turned, scanning the dimly lit stockroom. The boxes stacked against the walls seemed to close in tighter, the shadows longer than they should have been. My chest heaved as a reality hit me. I was trapped. Then, faintly, from the aisles just beyond the door, I heard it again. The whisper, louder this time, clearer, as though whoever or whatever it was knew exactly where I stood. You can't leave. I've always been a night owl. Back in college, I'd head to Walmart around 2 or 3 a.m. whenever I needed snacks, notebooks, or just a break from staring at my assignments. It felt safe in its own way. Brightly lit aisles, employees stocking shelves, and the comforting hum of machines running in the background. But one night, I learned how quickly normal could turn into something else entirely. It was late, well past 2 a.m., when I pulled into the parking lot. The store looked quiet, emptier than usual. I told myself that was fine. Fewer people meant I could grab what I needed and get out fast. I parked under one of the tall lights, though I noticed half the bulbs in the lot were burnt out, leaving long stretches of shadow. Inside, the store was almost too clean. Aisles perfectly lined, not a single cart left out of place. It felt staged, like I'd walked into a set. I grabbed a basket, trying to shake off the weirdness, and started toward the snack aisle. That's when I noticed something strange. Every aisle I passed had the same faint sound, a steady, slow rhythm, like someone dragging their feet just out of sight. The sound followed me, no matter where I went. I stopped by the chips, pretending to read the labels, but my ears strained for it. Shuffle, drag, shuffle, drag. It was faint, but it was there. I told myself it was probably an employee stocking shelves. But when I peeked around the corner, the aisle was empty. No carts, no boxes, just rows of brightly colored bags staring back at me. I swallowed hard, tossed a bag of chips into my basket, and moved on. The sound picked up again, this time closer. I turned sharply, half expecting to see someone behind me, but the aisle stretched out empty. My reflection in the glossy freezer door startled me. It looked pale, anxious, almost like a stranger's face staring back. Then I saw it, on the floor near the corner of the aisle. A pair of worn-out black shoes, toes pointing toward me. But there were no legs, no body, just the shoes. And before I could process what I was seeing, they slid a few inches forward, dragging against the tile. I dropped my basket and backed away, heart racing. The shoes were gone by the time I blinked, like they'd never been there. I tried convincing myself my eyes were playing tricks, but the dread crawling up my spine told me otherwise. I hurried toward the refrigerated section, thinking maybe I'd run into an actual employee. That's when I noticed it. The air grew colder the closer I got. At first, I thought it was just the freezers, but no, this was different. The cold was sharp, unnatural, and it clung to my skin. My breath fogged in front of me as I walked. And then I saw something inside one of the glass doors. At first, I thought it was a reflection. But no, someone was standing inside the freezer unit. A man, tall and thin, pressed against the glass. His eyes were wide open, lips moving as though whispering words I couldn't hear. I blinked, and he was gone. The shelves behind the glass were just stocked with frozen pizzas. But the fog of my own breath still hung in the air, proof that something wasn't right. I told myself I was done. I didn't care about snacks or notebooks anymore. I just needed to get out. I hurried back toward the registers, basket abandoned, every step echoing louder than it should have. Halfway there, the overhead speakers crackled to life. A low voice poured out, distorted and slow, "Shopper, come back." The words were stretched, warped, but clear enough to make my blood run cold. I froze under the speakers, staring up like they'd betray some clue. My mind raced. Employees didn't talk like that. Announcements were automated, cheerful, generic. This was personal, directed at me. I ran. I didn't think. I just bolted down the main aisle, heart pounding against my ribs. But no matter how far I went, the voice followed, repeating the same phrase again and again. "Shopper, come back." I reached the front registers, breathing so hard I thought I might collapse. The checkout lane stretched out, all dark except one. Lane 7. Its overhead light flickered weakly, glowing just enough to draw my eyes. The conveyor belt was running by itself, humming as it rolled forward. And on it, I saw items sliding down, things I hadn't picked up, a bag of chips, a notebook, a bottle of water, all the exact things I had been planning to buy. I stood frozen, watching as each item moved slowly toward the end of the belt, like someone or something already knew what I wanted. My throat tightened, and I backed away, shaking my head. Then the register beeped, not once, but twice, like invisible hands were scanning the items. Ringing them up, the receipt printer whirred, spitting out a slip of paper that fluttered onto the floor. I didn't want to pick it up. Every part of me screamed to leave it where it fell, but my body moved on its own like I had no choice. My trembling hand reached down, fingers brushing against the thin paper. I unfolded it slowly. At first, it looked normal, my exact items listed in neat black ink. But at the bottom, instead of price or total, there was only one line. Just 5 words. "You shouldn't be here." The air around me dropped, colder than before. I dropped the receipt, backing away so fast I nearly tripped. My chest heaved, and for the first time that night, I understood I wasn't just being watched. I was being targeted. And something in that store wanted me to know I wasn't leaving on my own. I've always been curious about abandoned places. There's something unsettling yet magnetic about stepping into a building where life once thrived, now left to rot. So when I heard that an old Walmart on the edge of town had been shut down years ago, but was still standing, I couldn't resist. My friends backed out last minute, so I went alone. I wish I hadn't. I pulled up just after midnight. The parking lot was cracked, weeds growing through the asphalt. The once bright sign faded and broken. The automatic doors were long out of service, but one panel was pried open just enough to slip through. My flashlight cut through the darkness as I stepped inside. The smell hit me first. Stale air mixed with mold and something metallic I couldn't place. My footsteps echoed unnaturally loud across the empty floor. The shelves had been stripped bare, but the skeletal frames of checkout lanes still stood like silent sentinels. Places like this usually feel dead, but not this one. The silence wasn't empty. It was listening. I wandered deeper, shining my light across walls covered in graffiti. Most of it was harmless, tags, scribbles, but one phrase stood out. It was spray painted across the toy aisle in large black letters. "Don't stay past 3. I checked my phone. 12:47 a.m. Plenty of time, I thought. Still, the words unsettled me. I pressed on, sweeping the beam of my flashlight over broken tiles and scattered debris. Every so often, I'd hear something small, a drip of water, the scuttle of a rat. But then came a sound I couldn't explain. It was faint at first, like the squeak of a cartwheel. I froze, holding my breath. The sound grew clearer, rhythmic, moving down an aisle parallel to mine. A cart being pushed. Slowly. I told myself maybe some other explorer had wandered in. But when I called out, "Hello? Someone there?" the sound stopped instantly. Too instantly, I turned the corner cautiously, flashlight trembling in my grip. And there it was. A shopping cart stood in the middle of the aisle, perfectly upright. Its wheels were wet, leaving streaks across the dusty tile as though it had just been moved. My stomach knotted. I wasn't imagining it. Something had been pushing that cart. I shined my light around, but the aisle was empty. No footprints, no shadows, nothing but that cart. I backed away, keeping it in view, until my shoulder bumped against a shelf. The clang echoed, and in that same instant, the cart rolled forward on its own. Not fast, not sudden, just a slow, steady push, the wheels squealing in protest. My breath caught in my throat as I stumbled backward. The cart stopped dead after a few feet. Then, from somewhere deeper in the store, a voice whispered, low, harsh, and close enough to make my skin crawl. "Keep going." I don't know why I didn't run right then. Maybe shock, maybe pride, maybe something else entirely. I checked my phone again. 3:04 a.m. My stomach dropped. Somehow, I had lost track of time. That's when the lights overhead flickered on. Not all of them, just a row down the center aisle. They buzzed faintly, illuminating a figure at the far end. A tall, thin man stood there, head tilted, hands gripping the handle of another cart. He didn't move toward me. He just watched. I backed away slowly, my heart pounding. My only thought was the way out. But when I turned toward the entrance, the glass doors that had been open before were sealed shut, as if welded closed. I spun around, searching for another exit, but every corner of the store seemed to stretch farther away, twisting into darkness that hadn't been there before. The last thing I remember was the sound of cart wheels screeching against tile, closing in from every direction, and then nothing.